what's up, Revision Kids lead teachers? Thank you again for shaping the future, for pouring into the next generation, for making Revision Kids the best hour of every kid's week. In this video, I'd like to talk about the fourth simple thing that we're asking you to do, the fourth simple thing this role requires, the fourth easy way to win weekly as a lead teacher in Revision Kids is this: seek to be 100% of whatever the moment calls for. Seek to be 100% whatever the moment calls for. That could be fun, loud, sensitive, passionate, energetic, worshipful, joyful, excited, serious, intense. Like whatever the moment calls for, you gotta be. And I realize this one's really subjective. It's kind of the hardest one to put a finger on. We know what it looks like to read through a lesson ahead of time. We know what it looks like to pray. We know whether we showed up 20 minutes ahead of time or not 20 minutes ahead of time. All of that stuff is measurable, and seeking to be 100% of whatever the moment calls for is a little bit more subjective. But it's incredibly important. The best kids ministry leader I ever knew in my entire life was actually a teenager named Thomas. And I saw him do this in kids ministry. I saw him do it on mission trips. I saw him do it at VBSs. But Thomas had a unique ability to gain the trust of students and the love of students. Like, everybody loved him because he was all in at whatever he was doing. Wherever he was all there, and whatever he was doing it at 100%. And so when it was time to play games with high energy, Thomas was the most energetic person in the room. When it was time to worship, he was the most worshipful person in the room. When it was time to be serious, he was the most serious person in the room. And it seems almost silly to think that the crazy screaming guy on the stage, the guy who was doing all the actions and the music with more flair than anyone else, could command the attention of kids in a small group after being that crazy. But he did, because he had an emotional authority with the kids. They trusted that he wasn't annoyed to be there, that he wasn't just filling in, just watching them, just being a warm body. They trusted that he wanted to be there as much as they wanted to be there, that he was all in, that he was on their level, and that he was fired up about it. And so when Thomas got serious, when Thomas decided, hey guys, let's sit down and talk about who Jesus is, every kid listened. And what we know is that that's not a unique phenomenon. There's all kinds of science that backs up the idea that if we engage kids on their level, if they have an emotional trust that we're there, that we're all in the place where we are, because it's easy to not be all in. It's easy, even as a parent, right, to be kind of present but not present. But if we're all the way present, they trust us. And if they trust us, they're going to listen to us. And so to win at Revision Kids, you got to figure out what the moment calls for, and you got to go all out. Which means during game time, you have to be the most energetic person in the room. They're going to take their cues for you. Kids will not have more energy than you have. You're not going to be able to lead them to a place you're not willing to go. It just is. And so at game time, you got to go all out. You got to fire them up. You got to make them sweat, because here's what happens when they sweat. Here's what happens if you're energetic during game time, and you're energetic and you do all the silly motions during worship time. Here's what we know happens. They breathe heavily. And when they breathe heavily, oxygen comes into their bodies, and their bloodstream literally gets reoxygenated. And this is science. A reoxygenated bloodstream feeds the brain oxygen, and when our blood gets reoxygenated, our brains are more able to listen, process, and remember new information. And so if you can be wild when it's time to be wild, you can sit them down and teach them a lesson that they're tuned into, that they're processing, and that they're more likely to remember than they would be if they hadn't gone wild before. All this is intentional. We're not just playing games to kill time. We're playing games to get them in a space where we can teach them the gospel, where we can tell them who Jesus is and who they're made to be. And so as you go all in for whatever it takes, as you're 100% of whatever the moment calls for, you're preparing their hearts. You're preparing their brains just on a physical level to learn what we're about to tell them, and you're preparing their hearts to trust you emotionally, that you're there and that you care. And when they trust you, you can speak into their lives. They're more ready to learn, and they trust you more deeply, and that makes a difference. And so to win every week, and it's subjective, and this is one that sometimes we're gonna get wrong, but just be all in. If you lead they'll follow. Even when it feels ridiculous, even when you feel like this is too much and it's too ridiculous, they'll follow you and they'll trust you and they'll learn. And so go nuts when it's time to go nuts, so that you can be serious when it's time to be serious. And if you do that, what you'll find is that you connect better to the kids, that you have more fun, that they have more fun, and that they're better able, like on a physical level, but also on an emotional and spiritual level, to learn the incredibly important gospel truths that we're teaching them. And you'll be able to shape their future. So thank you so much for doing it. Every week, let's try and be 100% of whatever the moment calls for.